Hi there, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Rini and I share DIY decor and craft ideas. In today's video, we're going to be creating DIY Christmas decor pieces inspired by Scandinavian or Nordic style. Scandinavian decor looks minimal and simple. It often features natural materials and neutral colors. Before we start, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already and click the bell notification. Now let's dive right into the DIYs. To make the gnomes' bodies, I used these styrofoam balls. To make their clothes, I grabbed a piece of brown felt fabric and burlap trim. First, I measured how much fabric I needed to wrap around the gnomes' bodies. Then I cut it to size and glued the burlap trim onto the felt with fabric glue. I added brown felt under the burlap trim to make the gnomes' outfits look more opaque and give them some extra texture. Then I cut the felt following the edges of the burlap trim. I grabbed another piece of burlap shorter than the previous one and repeated the same process. I aimed to create a height difference between the two gnomes, making one shorter than the other. Then I used hot glue to attach the fabric to the styrofoam ball starting from its middle. I continued wrapping the fabric around the ball. We want to ensure the fabric is properly aligned and snug, allowing the gnome to stand securely on the surface. I repeated the same thing for the other styrofoam ball. Once these were done, I grabbed some white yarn to make the beards of the gnomes. First, I cut a long strand of yarn. I folded another strand of yarn and measured how long I wanted the beard to be. Based on that length, I bundled several yarn strands together. Then I went ahead and cut the ends. I taped both the ends of the long piece of yarn to secure it in place. I grabbed a piece of yarn I cut before, folded it in half, and placed the loop under the base strand. Then I pulled both the ends of the shorter yarn piece through the loop and tightened the knot to create lark's head knot. I took each shorter strand, folded it in half, and used a lark's head knot to attach it to the longer strand. I repeated this process, tying knots along the longer strand until the desired beard width was achieved. In the same way, I made another set of beard for the other gnome. Once that was done, I separated both the sections, applied a thin layer of hot glue along the band of the beard, and attached it right above the edge of the gnome's outfit. After the glue dried, I trimmed the yarn to give shape to the beard. I wanted to make two different colored hats for each gnome. First, I used a dark brown felt and traced a semicircle towards the corner. I made straight cuts near both ends of the semicircular shape in order to improve the overall shape of the hat. I wrapped the cone around the gnome's head to measure the width of the hat I needed. Once I figured that out, I applied hot glue along the edges and pressed them together, forming a cone-shaped hat. In order to attach the hat, I applied hot glue along the band of the beard and upper edges of the outfit. We want to attach the hat in a way that hides the styrofoam ball. To make the gnome's nose, I used a wooden bead, applied a dab of hot glue on it, and attached it right below the hat. To make a hat for the other gnome, I used this golden brown felt and repeated the same process. Then I attached the hat with hot glue and added a nose. This completed our DIY Nordic style inspired gnomes. I think they turned out really adorable. Let me know in the comments what you think. To make Scandinavian style inspired Christmas trees, I grabbed these large craft sticks. I also grabbed two small dowels. I laid out 3 craft sticks and aligned them like so. With a ruler, I drew a straight line as a guide and taped them down on both the sides to hold them in place. I was going to make a pair of trees with one having a base length of 8 cm and the other 7 cm. Using a ruler, I marked the center point on the uppermost craft stick. From the center point, I drew lines towards 2 corners forming a triangular shape. I repeated the same for the other tree. I held the ruler along the marked line as a guide. Then using a box cutter, I started to score along the marked line. I carefully ran the blade while applying a little bit pressure to create shallow groove on the surface. I scored the lines a few times to ensure the grooves were well defined. Once that was done, I gently snapped the craft sticks along the scored lines. I cut out any splinters with a pair of scissors. If necessary, you can sand down the edges to smooth them. I drew a vertical line along the center of the tree. I was going to use this line as a reference while attaching the dowel. To create equal gaps between the three pieces, I placed popsicle sticks between them. After ensuring everything was aligned correctly, I applied wood glue along the previously marked vertical line. Then I pressed the dowel firmly and held it in place for a few minutes. I wiped any excess glue and allowed it to dry completely. Once the trees were done, I grabbed 2 wooden cubes to make their bases and 2 of these wooden stars to go on the top of the trees. In order to achieve a stained wood effect, I mixed brown and a little amount of red acrylic paint. Then I added a lot of water to the paint to dilute it. I wanted to go for a lightly stained look. However, you can dilute the paint depending on the intensity of the stain you want to go for. I applied the paint on the trees as well as the wooden cubes. I painted the stars with black acrylic paint. I used hot glue to attach the stars to the top of the trees. In order to attach the trees to their bases, I drilled holes at the center of the wooden cubes. Then I applied a dab of hot glue to the bottom of the dowel and attached the tree to the base. This is how our DIY Scandinavian Christmas trees turned out. For this DIY project, I used a 5x5 inches square wood panel. To stain the wood panel, I added a tiny amount of red to brown acrylic paint, mixed them well and diluted the paint by adding some water. I applied the paint onto the frame of the panel. Then I painted the sides and the back of the panel as well. Next, I grabbed this tumbling tower set. You can find these at Dollar Tree. I used 4 of these rectangular blocks. To paint them, I used a light gray acrylic paint. I coated all the 4 sides of the rectangular blocks with this gray paint. To get a more opaque finish, I applied an additional coat of paint. I used washi tape to tape along the inner edges of the frame. Then I used off-white acrylic paint to paint the interior surface of the wood panel. After applying 2 coats of paint, I removed the tape pieces to reveal the crisp lines. To make the roofs of the houses, I used the scrap craft stick pieces from the last DIY. First, I measured the width of the houses. Based on that measurement, I drew a triangular shaped roof on the craft stick. Using a box cutter, I scored along the marked lines. Then I snapped the craft stick along the grooves. Once the first roof was done, I used it as a guide to trace 3 more roofs and cut them out. We want the roof to be just a little bit wider than the house. I made the top of the roofs a little blunt with a pair of scissors. To paint them, I mixed together some black and gray acrylic paint. I coated all the pieces with this charcoal color, including the edges. Using a waterproof black gel pen, I drew the doors and windows of the houses. To add more details, I drew the window and door panels as well. I attached the roofs to the houses with the help of super glue. I pressed them together for a few seconds in order to attach them. To add some greenery, I used 1 tiny Christmas tree. I found these at Michael's. I applied small amounts of hot glue to the bottoms of the houses and attached them one by one to the wooden panel. I also left a little gap between each house. Lastly, I attached the Christmas tree. This completed our DIY Scandinavian style inspired tiny Christmas village. That's all for today. I hope you liked these DIY Scandinavian Christmas crafts. Please let me know in the comments which piece is your favorite. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time. Happy holidays!